Imagine a janitor who, spent his entire life just sweeping floors and pumping gas.
Right.
And now imagine a Harvard-educated Wall Street executive, who ends up with $8 million dollars and who ends up bankrupt. Spoiler alert, it is definitely not who you think.
Yeah, it honestly sounds like a movie script, but the reality of this guy, Ronald Reed, it really just shatters everything we assume about wealth.
It totally does. Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. Today, our mission is to unpack the secrets of wealth accumulation. We're basing this on some incredible insights from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money.
Exactly. And we are throwing out the complex spreadsheets today. We're looking at the hidden behavioral blueprints that actually dictate your financial destiny.
Yeah, because we're not focusing on dry math or, complex financial products. We want to extract those mind-blowing concepts to help you discover a real blueprint for financial independence.
So let's just jump right in and break down the mechanics of this, because Ronald Reed's life is basically a walking paradox.
Oh, 100%. Here is a guy from rural Vermont, right? For 25 years, he fixed cars at a gas station.
Just a totally normal blue-collar job.
Right. And then for another 17 years, he swept floors at a JCPenney. He bought this little 2-bedroom house for like 12 grand and just lived there the rest of his life.
I think his main hobby was literally chopping wood.
Yes, chopping wood. But then, when he died at age 92 in 2014, he made international headlines. Out of the millions of Americans who died that year, fewer than 4,000 had a net worth over $8 million.
And Ronald Reed was somehow one of them.
Exactly. He left $2 million to his stepkids and over $6 million to his local hospital and library.
Which is just, people were completely baffled by this. There was no lottery win. There was no secret inheritance.
Right, so how did he do it?
He simply avoided complex financial products. He lived a highly disciplined, very simple life. He saved what he could. He bought blue chip stocks, and he just waited for decades.
Wow. And then, you look at the stark contrast with Richard Fuscone.
Oh, yeah, the other side of the coin.
Right. So Fuscone is Harvard educated, has an MBA, and becomes this highly successful executive at Merrill Lynch. The guy retired in his 40s to do philanthropy.
He had the network, the pedigree, all the deep technical knowledge you could possibly want.
Exactly. But just months before Ronald Reed died and left millions to charity, Fuscone was in the news because his massive mansion, which, by the way, had an indoor pool, was being foreclosed on.
Yeah, he was completely ruined by heavy debt and leverage.
So what does this actually tell us?
Well, look at the structural anomaly this exposes. Finance is arguably the only field where an untrained amateur with zero formal background can massively outperform the top professionals.
That is such a wild concept.
Right, because you would never see a janitor perform a better open heart surgery than a Harvard-trained surgeon.
Obviously not.
And an amateur is not going to design a structurally sound skyscraper better than a veteran architect.
Right.
But in investing, the janitor beats the Merrill Lynch executive.
But wait, are you saying financial literacy doesn't matter at all? Like that reading balance sheets or understanding market dynamics is just a complete waste of time?
No, it is not a waste of time, but it is entirely secondary. Finance is taught as this math-based field where you just put data into a formula and get an answer.
Right, like an exact science.
Exactly.
Right.
But in reality, finance is applied psychology. Knowing the math is completely useless if your emotions override your logic.
Ah, okay.
Fuscone had all the education, but he lacked the behavioral discipline. Red had no financial education, but he mastered his own psychology.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like how a brilliant heart surgeon knows exactly how the cardiovascular system works, but might still eat fast food for lunch and skip the gym every single day.
Yes, that is the perfect analogy.
Because knowing what to do doesn't mean your brain will actually let you do it when emotions or stress kick in.
Exactly. The financial success we're talking about here is a soft skill, not a hard science.
Okay, so if behavior and simplicity are the foundation, you still need to know how that simple behavior actually builds the money.
Right, and the answer to that is time. Time is the multiplier. To really understand how simple behavior builds enormous wealth, we have to look at the underlying mechanics of compounding.
Let's talk about Warren Buffett because his numbers are just staggering.
They really are. At the time this source material was published, Buffett's net worth was about $84.5 billion.
Okay.
But $81.5 billion of that came after his 65th birthday.
Wait, that statistic always sounds totally broken to me. How does someone make over 95% of their lifetime wealth after they reach standard retirement age?
By simply not interrupting the compounding process. I mean, Buffett's secret isn't just that he is a skilled investor. It is that he's been investing for three-quarters of a century.
Because he started when he was, what, like 10 years old? Exactly. So let's change his timeline, just as a hypothetical.
Yeah.
If he had started at age 30 with $25,000 and then retired at 60 to just go play golf, earning the exact same incredible annual returns he always has, his net worth wouldn't be $84 billion.
What would it be?
It would be about $11.9 million.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he would have 99.9% less wealth simply by changing the time frame.
That is insane. Let's bring Jim Simons into this equation because this is where the math really bends the mind.
Oh, Jim Simons is fascinating. He's a hedge fund manager who historically just blew Buffett's returns out of the water. Simons compounded his wealth at 66% annually.
Which is unheard of because Buffett's annual return is around, what, 22%?
Exactly. So Simons is, on a percentage basis, a far superior investor.
Right.
But Simons is much less wealthy than Buffett. Why? Because Simons didn't hit his stride until he was 50 years old. He had less than half the time Buffett had to let his money actually grow.
And the sources run a hypothetical on this that is honestly hard to process. Yeah, they do. If Jim Simons had earned his 66% annual return over Buffett's 70-year timeline, do you know what his wealth would be?
I mean, I know it's big, but go ahead and say it.
It would be 63 quintillion, 900 quadrillion dollars.
I can't even, I mean, try to conceptualize that number. You just can't.
You really can't. Our brains are just not built to intuitively understand how small savings compound exponentially over time.
Because evolutionary biology basically wired us to think linearly, right?
Exactly. If you are a hunter-gatherer and you gather 8 apples a day, you know that in 4 days you will have 32 apples.
Yeah.
8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8.
Right.
But you never encounter a scenario in nature where you have 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 apples.
It's an avalanche. The snow at the very top of the mountain isn't what causes the destruction. A tiny snowball starts rolling, but it's the momentum and the surface area it gathers at the very bottom of the mountain that creates a million-ton disaster.
That is a great way to look at it. The real secret isn't hunting for the absolute highest return, because extreme returns are usually just one-off hits.
Yeah.
The real secret is getting a pretty good return that you can sustain for an uninterrupted massive stretch of time.
Wait, so you're telling me the best investing strategy isn't some complex algorithm or trading secret? The title of the best finance book should literally just be Shut Up and Wait.
Honestly, yes. But shutting up and waiting sounds easy. The hardest part of that equation is the word uninterrupted.
Because life happens.
Exactly. To wait, you have to survive. You have to endure market crashes, personal emergencies, and economic recessions without selling your assets.
So it's a fundamental shift in mindset between getting wealthy and staying wealthy.
Precisely. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two completely different skill sets.
So why do so many people interrupt that compounding process? Like, why do they mess it up?
Usually it's because they risk what they already have to get something they don't even need.
Right, which brings us to Rajat Gupta and Bernie Madoff. Now, obviously, we know Madoff for the infamous Ponzi scheme and Gupta for insider trading.
Right, the crimes are well known.
But the crazy part is, before they committed those crimes, they were already legitimately staggeringly rich. I mean, Madoff ran a completely legal market-making business, pulling in $25 to $50 million a year.
And Gupta was on the board of Goldman Sachs. He was worth $100 million. Legally.
So why do it?
Because they possessed no sense of enough. They threw away prestige, power, and unimaginable wealth for a marginal increase in their net worth.
It's just greed.
Well, it's the wrong mindset for their stage of wealth. Getting wealthy requires taking risks, being relentlessly optimistic, putting yourself out there.
Right.
But staying wealthy requires the exact opposite. It requires humility, it requires fear and paranoia. You need a survival mindset, knowing that what you've made can be taken away from you instantly if you overextend.
Why does this matter to me, though? Or to the listener? I mean, I don't have $100 million like Madoff.
Well, it matters, because the trap for the average person isn't starting a billion-dollar Ponzi scheme.
Right. Obviously not.
The trap is lifestyle creep.
Ah, yes. It's getting a $10,000 raise at work and immediately leasing a car that costs $10,000 more a year.
Exactly. This is about knowing when to start risking your reputation, your family time, or your peace of mind for something you don't actually need.
The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. If you keep moving the goalpost every time your income increases, you will never actually accumulate wealth.
And to stop the goalpost from moving, you have to understand the concept of a margin of error. You have to structure your financial life so that a bad investment, a missed promotion, or a sudden layoff won't just wipe you out entirely.
Right. Think about civil engineering. When engineers build a bridge, they don't design it to hold exactly 10,000 pounds just because the heaviest truck in town weighs 10,000 pounds.
No, that would be a disaster.
They design it to hold 50,000 pounds. They factor in high winds, earthquakes, simultaneous traffic. They build in a massive margin of error so the bridge survives the unexpected.
But most people build their personal finances to hold exactly the weight of their current paycheck, with zero structural steel left over for emergencies.
Wow. And that structural steel is what allows you to survive what the book calls tail events, right?
Exactly, tail events. In business and investing, a tiny percentage of events drive the vast majority of outcomes.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, look at the Russell 3000 index, which tracks a broad spectrum of established public companies. Over a 40-year period, 40% of those established companies effectively failed. They lost 70% of their value and never recovered.
Wait, 40%? If 40% of established companies essentially die, how does anyone make money in the stock market?
Because over that exact same 40-year period, the overall index went up 73-fold.
Walk me through the mathematical weight of that. How does an index multiply by 73 when nearly half of its components are literally bleeding out?
It all comes down to those extreme outliers. A tiny fraction of those companies, like the early investments in Apple or Amazon, succeed so massively that they generate tens of thousands of percent in returns.
Oh, I see.
That single massive win entirely eclipses the 40% of companies that went to zero. So you can be wrong half the time and still make a total fortune as long as your margin of error prevents those failures from taking you completely out of the game.
Right, you have to stay in the game to catch the tail event. But if we are constantly tempted to eliminate our margin of error, by buying the bigger house, the nicer car, the designer clothes, what is actually driving that behavior?
It's a great question.
Because we aren't doing it in a vacuum, we are doing it to signal status to other people.
Exactly, which naturally introduces this really fascinating concept, the man in the car paradox.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, it's so true. When you see a person driving down the street in a $100,000 Ferrari, you rarely look at the driver and think, wow, the person behind the wheel is so cool and successful.
Never. You don't even see their face.
Right. Instead, you look at the car and you imagine yourself driving it, thinking, man, if I drove that car, people would think I am cool.
It's so ironic. We use wealth to try and signal to others that we are worthy of admiration, completely ignoring that others are just using our wealth as a prop for their own fantasies.
It's a completely hollow transaction.
It really is.
And it exposes the great illusion of modern capitalism. We have been trained to judge wealth by what we can physically see.
Right. We see the cars, the massive houses, the first-class Instagram photos.
But true wealth is actually what you don't see. Wealth is the unbought Ferrari. It's the unbought diamond ring. It's the first-class upgrade you declined. Wealth is hidden. It is simply unspent income that provides you with future options.
Okay, there is this incredible anecdote in the sources about the singer Rihanna that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, the lawsuit, right?
Yeah, so she was nearly bankrupt a few years ago, and she actually sued her financial advisor, claiming mismanagement of her funds.
And the advisor's response in court was just absolutely brutal.
It really was. He essentially said, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money?
Ouch. But it's true. Society conditions us to equate having money with spending money. But the highest intrinsic value of money, the ultimate dividend it pays, is giving you control over your time.
So it's about autonomy.
Yes.
Right.
Being able to wake up and say, I can do whatever I want today with whoever I want for as long as I want. No luxury good can replicate the psychological relief of having total autonomy over your schedule.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, though. When most people say they want to be a millionaire, what they actually mean is they want to spend $1 million.
Exactly.
Which is the literal opposite of being a millionaire. The moment you spend $1 million, you are no longer a millionaire. You've exchanged your autonomy for a depreciating asset.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. If the goal is to save money to buy flexibility and time, how do we build habits that actually stick?
Right. How do we do it?
By ditching perfect spreadsheets for human reality. We have to stop trying to be perfectly rational machines and start aiming to simply be reasonable.
Break down the distinction between reasonable and rational for me, because those words are used interchangeably most of the time.
They are, but they shouldn't be. To illustrate the difference, let's look at a historical medical story. Julius Wagner Jahreg,
Okay.
He was a 19th century psychiatrist who discovered that he could treat syphilis by intentionally infecting his patients with malaria.
Wait. He gave them malaria on purpose?
Yes, because the extreme fever from the malaria would literally bake the syphilis bacteria out of the body.
Oh, wow.
Now, from a purely mathematical medical standpoint, it was perfectly rational. It cured the terminal disease.
Okay. Thank God.
But from a human standpoint, it was totally unreasonable. It was agonizing, terrifying, and insanely dangerous to the patient's immediate survival.
That sounds horrific. So how do we connect that extreme medical procedure to, like, a retirement account?
Well, in finance, mathematicians create these formulas for the optimal way to invest. A purely rational spreadsheet will tell a 25-year-old to put 100% of their money into volatile stocks.
Because over a 40-year period, stocks generally always win.
Exactly. Holding 100% stocks is the mathematical cure for outliving your money.
Oh, I follow.
But the human being holding those stocks has to endure the malaria fever of a 40% market crash. And when that crash happens, the psychological pain becomes so intense that the investor panics and sells everything at the bottom, locking in their losses.
Oh, so they abandon the rational strategy because they just can't handle the fever.
Exactly. And that is precisely why you should look at Harry Markowitz. He's the founder of modern portfolio theory.
The guy who won a Nobel Prize, right?
Yes. He literally won a Nobel Prize for creating the math that shows investors exactly how to optimize the balance between risk and reward.
Right.
But when it came to his own personal retirement money, he totally ignored his own Nobel Prize-winning math.
Wait, really? What did he do?
He just split his personal money 50-50 between stocks and bonds.
A Nobel laureate abandoned his own life's work for a basic 50-50 split. Why would he do that?
Because his goal wasn't to perfectly optimize his spreadsheet returns. His goal was to minimize his future regret. He knew that if the stock market crashed, he would panic. Splitting it 50-50 was mathematically irrational, sure, but psychologically, it was perfectly reasonable. It allowed him to actually sleep at night.
So a suboptimal strategy you can stick with during the bad times is infinitely better than a perfectly rational strategy that you abandon the moment things get scary.
Exactly. And that requires a massive amount of self-awareness. You have to know your own mental model.
Behavioral finance talks a lot about this. Every individual has a different mental model based on the economy they grew up in.
Right. If you grew up during the massive inflation of the 1970s, you probably avoid bonds because you watched inflation just eat away your parents' savings.
That makes sense.
But if you grew up in a stagnant, stable economy, you might view bonds as the ultimate safety net. Neither person is crazy. They are just operating on completely different generational software.
Which is why young investors really have to clearly define the specific game they are playing.
Exactly. One of the most destructive habits is taking cues from people who are playing a completely different game.
Right, like if you were a 25-year-old trying to save for a retirement that is 40 years away, you should definitely not be taking stock tips from a day trader on television who is trying to make a 2% profit by Friday afternoon.
Yes. Their risk tolerance, their time frame, and their goals are totally alien to yours.
But let me push back on this idea of goal setting for a second. If I shouldn't be a perfectly rational spreadsheet and I need to define my own game, how do I actually use this tomorrow morning? What should I be doing?
Well, standard financial advice says you need a concrete target, right? Save for a house, save for a car, save for a specific retirement number.
Yeah, that's what everyone tells you to do.
But the most counterintuitive advice we're seeing here is to just save money. To save money.
Wait, save without a goal. With inflation constantly eating away at purchasing power, isn't saving without a target actually kind of dangerous?
Well, when we say save, we aren't talking about stuffing physical cash under a mattress to be eaten by inflation. We are talking about acquiring assets and maintaining liquidity without a predefined spending goal.
Oh, okay. So investing it, but just not having an end game for it.
Exactly. Saving for a specific goal makes total sense in a predictable world. But we don't live in a predictable world. Saving just to save builds a hedge against life's inevitable surprises. It buys you that margin of error we talked about. And most importantly, it buys you the flexibility to change your mind.
And our goals are absolutely going to change. There is this psychological concept mentioned in the sources, Daniel Gilbert's end of history illusion.
Oh, that's a brilliant concept.
It's so real. It's this quirk where we recognize that we have changed drastically in the past, but we mistakenly believe that who we are right now is the final, finished version of ourselves.
Right. Just think about how many teenagers pay good money to get a tattoo, and then as adults, they pay 10 times that amount to get the exact same tattoo removed.
Exactly. We are terrible forecasters of our future desires. So if you lock yourself into a rigid, highly leveraged financial plan based on what you want today, you might be totally miserable in 20 years when your values have completely shifted.
But if you save just to save, you are giving your future self the ultimate gift, a blank check of options.
You get the freedom to quit a toxic work environment, or the freedom to relocate across the country for love, or honestly, just the freedom to take a breath when a medical emergency hits. That is the hidden blueprint.
It all circles back to the beginning. The mechanisms of wealth aren't found in advanced calculus. They're found in behavior over brains.
Right.
They rely on the silent avalanche of compounding, surviving the inevitable market dips with a margin of error, realizing that true wealth is the money you don't spend, and making decisions that are reasonable enough to let you sleep at night.
So if you can apply those self-awareness methods, if you can audit your own mental models, and refuse to get swept up in the status games other people are playing, you give yourself a massive advantage. An advantage over even the most highly educated professionals who let their egos bankrupt them.
We spend a tremendous amount of energy worrying about what we are doing with our money. But the real question to ask yourself today is, what is your money doing to you?
Wow.
Is it buying you a garage full of depreciating metal to impress strangers while tying you to a job you absolutely despise? Is it buying you chronic anxiety?
Or is it buying you freedom? We spend so much time worrying about the math, but ask yourself today, is it buying you anxiety or freedom? Remember Ronald Reed and Richard Fiscone. The truest form of wealth isn't a headline or an indoor pool. It is the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today.
Take control of your time, and the compounding will take care of itself.
What a profound thought to leave on. Thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of money. Take control of your time today, and we will see you on the next one.